The 2022 NFL season is here. You know what that means? It's time for my complete and official 2022 NFL season predictions. Every team, every record, every division, every playoff team, and of course my playoff predictions all in this video. Here we go. Let's begin with a division rundown, breaking down each team and their record. If you missed it, I gave full analysis on each and every team in the AFC and the NFC. Check out both previews for in-depth analysis on your favorite team. But here are the records for every team. The top team in the AFC resides in the AFC East. The winner of the East this season will be the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, and one of the top defenses in football. They will dominate this division, dominate the AFC, entering the playoffs as the number one seed in the AFC. In second place in the AFC East, I have the Miami Dolphins. Tua takes a step forward under a new coaching staff with a ton of weapons around him and a very good defense. This team is too talented to not have a winning record. I do still have the Patriots with a winning record, despite finishing in third in the AFC East, tied with the Dolphins at 9-8. Mac Jones takes a leap forward. The offense has their struggles, but perseveres, and the defense is extremely underrated, led by a bunch of young talent, and of course, the mastermind, Bill Belichick. In last place, you got the New York Jets. Zach Wilson struggles coming back from the injury. The team does have a ton of talent, but they don't necessarily know how to play in the NFL together. A lot of young talent working their way through their early years. I do expect the Jets to improve this year and be more competitive, but just not there yet. My predictions for the AFC North in 2022, Lamar Jackson leads the Ravens to the division crown, going 12-5 and finishing as a top 3 seed in the AFC. Lamar Jackson, huge bounce back season for him. Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews. And the Ravens get back to bully ball. Great defense, good running game. The Cincinnati Bengals once again make the playoffs as a wild card this season. Joe Burrow has an incredible season with an awesome offense. They've got great balance with Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, explosiveness, and the defense is still pretty good. In third place, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin fights and fights hard, but they aren't quite able to get to a winning record, with Kenny Pickett picking up some wins late in the season in his rookie season. George Pickens is definitely a bright spot, and of course this team will play good defense. In fourth place, the Cleveland Browns, no Deshaun Watson for much of the season, leaves Jacoby Brissett, just not a starting NFL quarterback here, and I do believe a little bit of an overrated roster with holes at wide receiver and in the interior defensive line. The Browns just aren't able to prop up a less than stellar quarterback this year. My predictions for the AFC South, the number one team in the South is the Indianapolis Colts, who will make the playoffs as the 4 seed in the AFC, going 10-7. Matt Ryan brings consistency, he brings leadership, he brings a mature quarterback to the Colts, and Paris Campbell, Alec Pierce support Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines, and Michael Pittman as the primary playmakers here. The offensive line improves from a year ago. The defense is stellar, both in the front and the back end, and I believe the Colts will pretty easily win this division. The number 2 team is the Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry just isn't able to dominate quite like he used to with a less than stellar offensive line. Not my favorite offensive scheme in the world. I love the defense and Mike Vrabel, but they just don't have enough on offense to make the playoffs this year. The number 3 seed in the AFC South is the Jacksonville Jags, who take a huge leap forward this season with Trevor Lawrence going 7-10. A very promising year that sets them up for a promising future. Trayvon Walker really ignites this front seven that could be one of the more underrated units in the NFL. And the 4th team in the AFC South is, of course, the Houston Texans. Dameon Pierce has a spectacular rookie season. Davis Mills looks up and down, shaky and great. They don't quite know his future. Brandon Cooks is Brandon Cooks. The defense shows flashes, but the consistency for this overall team isn't there, and I'm not sure Lovie Smith is the answer. My predictions for the AFC West this year: the most competitive division in football. The number one team in that competitive division will be the Los Angeles Chargers. It's time to bolt up. The most balanced team in this division wins it with a big upgrade on defense. Brandon Staley gets a much better and nicer reputation this year, and Justin Herbert takes another leap forward as being one of the greatest quarterbacks in the game. The number two team in the AFC West will surprisingly be Josh McDaniels' Las Vegas Raiders. Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, and Derek Carr take over offensively and put up absolute numbers and fireworks week after week, and this defense is deceptively pretty good under a new coaching staff. The number three team in the AFC West is still the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs do take a step back, but they're still a playoff team this year with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. They figured things out offensively, even though they might have to shift their identity from explosive to a little bit more patient. The defense is flashy, but not consistent. And the number four team in the AFC West, disappointingly, is Russell Wilson's Denver Broncos. They're just unable to piece everything together quickly enough for them to put together a playoff campaign, but they become a very dangerous team at the end of the year that nobody wants to see in the playoffs, thanks to Russell Wilson's magic and improving players on offense like Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. Javonte Williams establishes himself as an elite running back, and the defense is not great, but pretty solid. The AFC playoff teams this season will be the Buffalo Bills as the number one seed, the Los Angeles Chargers as the number two, the Baltimore Ravens as the number three, the Indianapolis Colts as the number four. As the number five, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. The six will be the Las Vegas Raiders. And number seven, the Kansas City Chiefs. My predictions for the NFC: beginning with the NFC East, the winners of the NFC East will be the 12-5 Philadelphia Eagles, who will punish opponents with dominance at the line of scrimmage. A.J. Brown is a huge addition for Jalen Hurts, who makes enough plays for one of the best rosters in football to establish themselves as this year's breakout team. The number two team is Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys' inconsistency continues here with too many pieces missing from last year on the offense. The offensive line is in shambles, the receiving core isn't quite what it used to be, and the defense that thrived off turnovers just doesn't get as lucky as they were a year ago. The Washington Commanders are a solid football team at 7-10, but Carson Wentz's inconsistency and absolutely headache football games make them a third place team in this division. The fourth place team is a rising and a bright New York Giants, a football team that won't be very good this year, but will be competitive, will be improved thanks to a Saquon Barkley revival, Daniel Jones making the organization think twice about moving on, and a defense that will be very, very tough under Don Martindale. My predictions for the NFC North: the Green Bay Packers once again win this division. Aaron Rodgers will not let it go. He still figures it out post Davante Adams. Offensively, they run it through their running backs. A.J. Dillon has a huge season this year. The defense carries their weight as well as one of the best defenses in football. The Minnesota Vikings will break out under Kevin O'Connell offensively. Justin Jefferson will establish himself as the best receiver in football. Adam Thielen has one last great year left in him. Dalvin Cook does his thing, and Kirk Cousins has one of his best seasons of his career. The number three team in the NFC North is the Restore the Roar Detroit Lions. The Lions really have something cooking under Dan Campbell, but aren't quite able to make that playoff leap this year thanks to just a less than stellar quarterback in Jared Goff. But everything else looks promising. DeAndre Swift dominates as a receiver and a rusher. Jamison Williams pops at the end of the year and really provides intrigue for 2023, and the defense is shaky but has its moments. The number 4 team in the North is the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields shows that he can play in this league and start in this league and become a franchise guy, but the team around him is just far too inconsistent. He can rely on Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and not much else. This offensive line is not good, and the receiving core behind Mooney is less than stellar. The defense is just not what it used to be. My predictions for the NFC South this season: Tampa Bay wins the division. Of course, Tom Brady really has a huge year once again in Tampa Bay, throwing the football more than anybody else and spreading and shredding to Chris Godwin, who comes back from injury and has a good year. Mike Evans, who's Mike Evans. Russell Gage fits in nicely, and Julio looks like his prime self, or at least close this year. And the defense is the real story of this team, finishing as a top unit in the NFL. The number 2 team in the NFC South is the New Orleans Saints. Jameis has a resurgent year in New Orleans. Michael Thomas is healthy this year and looks like Michael Thomas. Alvin Kamara is still Alvin Kamara. Chris Olave provides enough flashes down the field, and the defense is still fantastic. The number 3 team in this division is the Carolina Panthers. Baker Mayfield, for a good stretch of the season, is looking like one of the best stories in football, winning and leading this football team. And I believe that Baker Mayfield, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore will all have some of their best seasons of their career. The defense is not as good as it was last year, but it's still solid enough. The biggest question at the end of the year will be, is Matt Rule the future at coach? And the worst team, the number 4 team in the NFC South, is the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith, big questions about him moving forward after this year, but Marcus Mariota provides flashes for perhaps another job down the road as Desmond Ridder finishes the season and shows enough flashes for him to become the starter next year. The defense is not great. It's one of the worst in football, but Drake London and Kyle Pitts both have huge years. My predictions for the NFC West this year: the winner of the West will be the Niners this season, going 11-6 and finishing as the 3rd seed in the NFC. Trey Lance has high highs and low lows. The defense is utterly dominant, with Nick Bosa being arguably the best pass rusher in football this year. George Kittle, Debo, Brandon Ayuk all sprinkle in huge plays, and Ayuk actually becomes the go-to target of Trey Lance. The number 2 team in this division is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams will struggle through some Stafford injuries, will have to deal with the target on their back, but they still persevere with their superb talent, great coaching, and make the playoffs and look dangerous towards the end of the year. The number 3 team in this division is the Cardinals, who take a step back. They can't really deal with no DeAndre Hopkins for 6 weeks. They deal with a tough schedule, and it just doesn't work out for them this year. Kyler Murray has a lot of fun playing Call of Duty, but not a lot of fun playing football. The worst team in the NFC West is the Seattle Seahawks. Pete Carroll could retire at the end of this season after Geno Smith and Drew Lock both look like absolutely backups for this football team. DK Metcalf becomes a bit frustrated towards the end of the year. The defense is just not very good, and the Seahawks are left with a top pick in the draft next year. My NFC playoff teams for 2022. The number 1 seed is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The number 2 is the Philadelphia Eagles. The 3rd seed is the 49ers. The 4th seed is the Green Bay Packers. 5 seed is your Super Bowl champs LA Rams. The 6 seed is the Minnesota Vikings, and the 7 seed is a squeaking in New Orleans Saints. Now it's time to predict the playoffs. Let's begin in the AFC with the number 2 seed, the Los Angeles Chargers, taking on their biggest rival, the Kansas City Chiefs, as the 7 seed. This is unique because the Chiefs typically don't enter the playoffs as an underdog, but they are an underdog for a reason. They don't match up particularly well with the Chargers, which we will be able to see throughout the regular season. The Chargers are able to beat their man coverage heavy defense with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Palmer, and Eckler, and the Chargers are able to slow down Patrick Mahomes and the aerial attack of the Chiefs, forcing daring the Chiefs to run the ball on them. They just aren't able to get much going throughout the game consistently due to the Chargers' coverage players. Derwin James slowing down Travis Kelce, J.C. Jackson slowing down Valdez Scantling, Bryce Callahan slowing down Juju. It's just not a great matchup overall for the Chiefs because the Chargers have built their team, their roster this year to defeat the Chiefs. And that's why the Chargers in LA win this game and advance to the divisional round. The second matchup in the AFC wildcard round is the Las Vegas Raiders and the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, the 3 seed, the home team. The Raiders, the 6 seed, the away team. This game, I hope, is as great as that Monday Night Football matchup we saw in Vegas last year. It could very well be, as this is a tough one to determine. I honestly would love to see the Raiders advance here, but I've got to sway and take the Ravens because the Ravens have the playoff experience and because I look at the matchups and I feel the Ravens have slight edges. I think the Ravens pose a difficult matchup for the Raiders in terms of pass run threat offensively. They can run the ball reasonably well. Lamar is difficult for the Raiders to deal with in terms of their linebackers to run sideline to sideline with Lamar and also deal with Mark Andrews, who's a mismatch nightmare for this defense in particular. And I think that the Ravens defense can slow down Carr in the aerial attack enough. They can match up Marlon Humphrey with Devontae Adams. They can find a way to slow down Darren Waller with the safeties that they offer. I feel like the Ravens, with that playoff experience, John Harbaugh's familiarity with Josh McDaniels, I do think that comes in handy, especially in Baltimore, to advance in this game. The third and final matchup in the AFC is the number 4 seed Indianapolis Colts and the number 5 Cincinnati Bengals. This one should be a good game, but I fully expect the Bengals to go to Indianapolis in a dome and air the football out and win this game. The Bengals just have that swagger in the playoffs, and I feel like that appears once again for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow outperforms Matt Ryan, a Matt Ryan that in this game looks a little old. His arm just isn't able to make all the throws in this game necessary to allow the Colts to advance. They try to run the ball, but DJ Reader, BJ Hill, and the Bengals do a good enough job to slow that down. The Bengals just have too many receivers for the Colts to match up with. While Gilmore might slow down one of the receivers, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd will find their way to having big football games, and Burrow will put the ball on the money despite pressure in his face. I got the Bengals advancing to the divisional round. In the divisional round, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, the 2 seed, facing the Baltimore Ravens, the 3 seed. This game is real interesting. Personally, I believe the Chargers are a top 2 team in the AFC. So by that, I should have them advancing. But based on the matchup, I think this is one of the toughest matchups the Chargers could see in the playoffs. We saw this game last year, and while there are different players playing, the Ravens dominated the game. But the reason I pick the Ravens in this game is because of the side of the ball that the Ravens dominated. The Ravens dominated the offense of the Chargers. They confused Justin Herbert, and despite having a different defensive coordinator, I think that game plan comes back once again. And the Ravens do a good job at just covering and smothering Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and these weapons. These guys are not exactly electric. They don't have downfield threatening speed. I think the Ravens' size, physicality matches up well in this department. They can send some spicy blitzes at Herbert to confuse the quarterback a couple times in this game to get a couple big plays defensively. And then on the flip side, the Ravens might not be able to pass the ball very well in this matchup, but they will be able to determine pace of play through their running game. And Lamar didn't even play well in that game last year, and they won 34-6. So I'm not exactly saying that this will be a blowout, but I do think that the Ravens might have something in terms of this matchup. So I have the Ravens advancing to the AFC Championship. The other divisional matchup in the AFC is between the team that I thought should have made the Super Bowl in the AFC last year, the Buffalo Bills, and the team that actually did, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bills prove that they are a great team in this game. They take down the AFC champs at home in this matchup, which is likely to be a bit frosty, a bit cold. Josh Allen comes out firing. They're passing all over the yard against Eli Apple and the Bengals secondary, and Allen is able to make plays and throws that Matt Ryan wasn't the week before. Defensively, the Bills do a well enough job against the Bengals. They're able to get a couple sacks, a couple key plays from Von Miller and company. Tre'Davious White, looking like his prime self, comes through with a big matchup against Jamar Chase. And while the Bengals will move the football and score, and I probably think this would be a shootout, I am going to lean towards the team at home, the team with the more complete defense, and Josh Allen to win it. That means the AFC Championship is the Buffalo Bills hosting the Baltimore Ravens in Buffalo. This is a rematch of a playoff game a couple seasons ago between Lamar and Allen, which was a very low-scoring game. I believe that this game should go to the Bills, and the reason it should go to the Bills is because I think the Bills' defense matches up well with the Ravens offensively. I don't think the Ravens have enough in terms of personnel to pass the football consistently against the Bills. I think they'll struggle in those situations to move the football. Not due to Lamar, who will make all the plays possible with his legs, but due to the lack of depth at receiver, which the Bills will be able to hone in on Mark Andrews, take away Rashad Bateman with the personnel they offer defensively in the secondary, and Josh Allen will just have more at his disposal. He'll showcase his depth. Guys like Isaiah McKenzie, Dawson Knox, maybe even the rookie James Cook will come through against this good Ravens defense at home to provide them with the victory in the AFC Championship, meaning that the Bills advance to the Super Bowl, just as most people think. Now let's predict the NFC playoffs, the wild card round. We have the Philadelphia Eagles, the 2 seed, taking on the tough underdog New Orleans Saints in Philadelphia. This game could be cold at this time of the year in Philadelphia. I do think that the Eagles have showcased an advantage in this matchup in recent seasons, as Jalen Hurts has had 2 back-to-back years of great games versus the Saints defense. I do think the Eagles match up well in terms of their physicality. They're one of the lone teams in the NFL that can actually match up with what the Saints offer from a toughness perspective at both lines of scrimmage. I think the Eagles win that matchup. I also think that rather Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown will make a couple plays in the passing game here. On the flip side, Jameis Winston may struggle in this game because of the defensive line of the Eagles getting in his face and the weather that could also affect Jameis Winston in this game. So I've got the Eagles winning a sluggish, slow, low-scoring football game because of their line of scrimmage play. The number 3 seed San Francisco 49ers host the Minnesota Vikings in a game that's very reminiscent of a playoff game they played in 2019. Kirk Cousins does make this one interesting, as Justin Jefferson proves to be uncoverable in this game for the San Francisco 49ers, and he has a big game, keeping the Vikings in it down to the wire. But the 49ers' ability to get to the quarterback in the big moment is the difference. Nick Bosa and these pass rushers make a couple of plays versus not one of the better offensive lines in the Minnesota Vikings to allow the 49ers to advance. The number 4 seed Green Bay Packers host the Los Angeles Rams in the game of the week on Wild Card Weekend. The Green Bay Packers get some revenge from last year. We see the game that we never got to see, and that's the Green Bay Packers hosting the Los Angeles Rams. The 49ers upset the Packers last year, which kept them from hosting the NFC Championship. This time, Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field, he wins this game versus a West Coast team that's used to beautiful weather, the warm weather. Matthew Stafford and the Rams come into the cold, and they're just not quite able to handle it for the full 60 minutes. The Packers defense really suffocates the Rams passing game. They make life difficult on Stafford, Kupp, and company, and the Packers do enough to run the football, stay balanced, and Rodgers' magic at the line of scrimmage sets them up with good plays to move the football patiently down the field against this defense, enough to win the game. In the divisional round, we have the 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles hosting the San Francisco 49ers as the 3 seed. The 49ers and the Eagles are arguably the 2 closest and most familiar teams in football in this playoff field, meaning that they play very similar football on offense and on defense. They want to establish the line of scrimmage. They want to be able to run the football. Their quarterbacks are secondary options to their offense, and their defenses really run through the pass rush. I think the difference in this game is the coaching. I think Kyle Shanahan just out-coaches Nick Sirianni and company. And I think he exposes the perimeter run defense of the Eagles. He's not going to try to run at Jordan Davis and company, but he's going to try to expose the edges. And that's where the Niners do enough to win this game. Deebo Samuel also is a real difficult problem for this team, as they don't have an individual matchup to stop him in the passing game. The defense for the Niners is fast, it can flow sideline to sideline, and it can suffocate Jalen Hurts' ability to make magic in the run game, forcing Hurts to become a one-dimensional passer, which is where he's more uncomfortable, and it leaves the 49ers opportunities to get to the quarterback. The Niners win a close defensive battle in the cold against the Eagles on the road. In the other NFC divisional matchup, we have Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady. And once again, Tom Brady beats Aaron Rodgers, this time at home. This is a very difficult matchup for the Green Bay Packers. They lose the line of scrimmage in this game, especially on offense. The Packers' offensive line is a bit exposed in this game, as Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea provide too much up the middle for Aaron Rodgers to really make any time or space for him to make plays, because his receivers won't be able to create much separation without Devontae Adams. And as much as the Packers rely on the run game, it will be too difficult for them to really run the ball at a sustainable rate, which allows Todd Bowles to be creative in the blitzing department on third down to create some pressure on Aaron Rodgers. On the flip side, the Bucs will be able to move the ball thanks to the weapons that they offer. While Jair Alexander is phenomenal, the pure depth of the Bucs weaponry will provide too much for even a good Packers pass defense. Julio Jones comes up with a couple big plays, and Chris Godwin looks like Chris Godwin in this game. Brady starts early, moves the football, and wins this game versus a team that's used to the cold at this time of the year, playing in more of the heat. In the NFC Championship, we have my favorite player versus my favorite coach. Tom Brady taking on Kyle Shanahan in what would be an epic game. Does Jimmy Garoppolo get in the game? Well, that would make it even more interesting for Jimmy G to take on Tom Brady in this one. But nonetheless, we have Brady versus his hometown childhood team in his final season of his career. This would very much be a storybook game. The way I see this game going is an either way type of game. It really depends on the run defense of the Bucs versus the run game of the Niners, and the ability to protect Tom Brady versus a spectacular defensive line for the 49ers. I actually think this one would be low scoring, and I think that Brady at the end would just come through with more throws than Trey Lance. I just don't trust Trey Lance to come through in this moment versus this quarterback and this team on the road in this spot. So I will take the Bucs. Shanahan once again in a heartbreaker in a low-scoring game loses it to Tom Brady, as Brady will, when he finds time, will be able to find his receivers. I believe he'll be able to get the ball out quick enough to his playmakers in the big moment to make plays. And the Bucs do have the advantage, wide receivers versus secondary of the 49ers. But Nick Bosa and company do make life difficult early in the game. And like I said, the Bucs' run defense is just spectacular, and it makes Kyle's play sheet a little bit smaller, and it forces more pressure on Trey Lance, and I just don't think he'll come through consistently enough in this game. And that means my Super Bowl prediction is once again the Bucs versus the Bills. I've predicted this game to happen, I think, for the third straight year. I definitely predicted it to happen last year's playoffs. It didn't work out. So the Bucs were too injured and the Bills lost a heartbreaker. I do believe if there is a year for this game to happen, it should be this year. They're the favorite in both conferences. And honestly, while I would like to give you an upset in certain games and certain matchups, they're the two best teams in football with the two best quarterbacks, in my opinion, in football. They both have great depth. They have good defenses and good offenses. And this game would be absolutely epic. And honestly, even though I'm a Brady fan, I would absolutely love to see the Bills win as well. And honestly, it wouldn't very much affect Tom Brady's legacy to lose this game to the Bills. But he doesn't lose to the Bills, guys. He just doesn't lose to the Bills. So this game would be epic. I think it would be back and forth. I think Josh Allen would have a superb game running, throwing, and making life difficult on Todd Bowles' defense. But the one area that I feel like the Bucs win this game is their interior pass rush becoming a problem. If Akeem Hicks is as good as I think he will be this year, along with Vita Vea, I think the Bills' weakness could be in the interior of their offensive line. With a lack of a running game, especially from the running backs, being extremely one-dimensional will be a problem in moments in this game for the Bills. For the Bucs, I think they'll have enough of a running game, along with some play action to mix in there, to keep the Bills' defense on their toes. And while McDermott is very familiar with Brady and has caused issues for him in the past, I do believe that Brady having more weapons at his disposal than he did ever in New England in his later years will be enough for him to overcome the potential schematic disadvantage that he has in this game. So I think Tom Brady just comes through. I think the receivers, Julio potentially with a huge game in this moment. I think that the Bucs are just the more complete team here that can beat you in more ways. I think the Bills, arguably, if they play their absolute best, could come through with this win. But I just think the Bucs will be the more complete team in this matchup, and it will be epic. But I've got the Bucs winning the game and winning the Super Bowl. Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl MVP. And guys, I know that some of you may call me biased or whatever, but there's a few things to be said about this. Honestly, there's not a lot of people picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the Super Bowl right now, and I don't really understand why. So I want to be on this platform to predict this game and to predict this winner. I also want to say that I kind of made a promise to myself that ever since the last season when Brady went to Tampa Bay and won the Super Bowl, I'd never bet against Brady again to win the Super Bowl. And I really do feel like these were the two best teams last year. And I just felt like it wasn't in the cards last year. But I do feel like it's in the cards this year for it to happen. And as long as everyone is healthy involved in this game and these two teams, I think this is the matchup we will see. And I think that the Bucs will be very much like those Patriots teams who one year it just wouldn't go their way, but the next year they'd bounce back and have something to prove, and they'd be healthy and they'd overcome. And that's due to Tom Brady. Brady goes out on top, and there wouldn't be a better way to send him into retirement. And that is my prediction and my predictions for the 2022 NFL season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe to the channel for more NFL. I'm so excited for this season. I'm so excited to make this content for you guys. So, let's enjoy this season, man. Peace.